So, Phil, you have a piece out today on RCP about how the CIA buried an intelligence report concerning Ukraine and that they did it because it would have embarrassed then Vice President Joe Biden. So, tell us about this story and what you learned.
So rewind to December of 2015, then Vice President Joe Biden takes this trip to Ukraine. Ukraine is squarely in his portfolio. And what we discovered through these recently declassified documents is that the Ukrainians were unimpressed. They thought he was going to go over there and he was going to meet with the Poroshenko administration, identify specific areas of improvement for them. Instead, the analysis that the CIA picked up on was that members of the Ukrainian government were bewildered that Biden just delivered a generic speech and then got out of Dodge. And the other thing that the CIA picked up on was that there was a belief within the Poroshenko administration that the reason why Biden didn't give them more of a hard sell is because of U.S. media scrutiny of his own family's overseas business dealings in that country. The scandal here really is when in February 10th of 2016, Biden's team specifically requests that intelligence not be included and not be disseminated in the presidential daily brief. This is a very rare thing that a politician would bigfoot the intelligence community and ask for an intelligence product not to be distributed.
Well, there's something else there, Phil, too. When the scandal erupted about you, when the United States, Ukraine became sort of a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, you're rooting for Ukraine, and Trump and MAGA people start saying kind things about Russia, and you got to go back to the 1930s to hear anything like it. The Ukraine policy became partisan in this country, and what Republicans said was that Biden had gone over there ostensibly to promote American ideals of transparency and good government, but actually he was really trying to quash an investigation into Burisma because his son was getting millions of dollars being paid to be on their board. This was dismissed in the legacy media and by all Democrats as a conspiracy theory and just abject nuttery. Except now we know the CIA it's what the Ukrainians themselves thought, and the CIA prepared a report documenting this, and Biden himself, his office, was able to squelch the report.
Yeah, the expectation of the Ukrainians was that Biden was going to do exactly that he was going to say Viktor Shumkin, then the top prosecutor over there, needed to go. But what's interesting about this is he didn't give them the hard sell when he was in Ukraine. He didn't make a specific ask. And to your point, I mean, this was front and center in the 2020 presidential election, where you had Republicans saying that Biden was using foreign policy to advance the interest of his own family, that he was defending his son. Democrats were saying, no, Biden was only pressuring this prosecutor because the international community wanted his ouster and he himself was corrupt. What I find, so on brand here is that Biden kind of didn't do either, at least during this trip. He bragged about it later during these now famous remarks at the Council of Foreign Relations, where he said that he told the Ukrainians that they had 6 hours to fire the prosecutor or they weren't going to get $1 billion in U.S. aid. Well, that's not exactly what happened. Instead, he returned to the United States without making the hard sell. And what we discovered, we took a closer look at the timeline here. On February 10th, that's when his office requests that the CIA bury this report. Then on February 11th, all of a sudden, that's when Biden gets back on the phone with Ukrainians to discuss, among other things, corruption. Perhaps the former vice president did that because he realized that he had work left to be undone.
Can I ask a question real quick? How did Biden find out that there was this unflattering report that he was then able to squash? I mean, that seems like, that seems unusual that he would get a heads up. How many times does this happen in government where, the intelligence community is supposed to be producing these, they happen all the time, as you mentioned in the story, Phil, these after action reports. I wonder, is everybody getting heads up, and are other people able to squash these reports, or was this just specifically just so happened that the vice president's office got a heads up on this?
There's so much that we still don't know. The senior CIA official who walked us through this was unable to say whether or not this information made it to Obama's desk, what the process looked like. These documents were just recently discovered, I was told, and are only now being declassified. But I think that we get a bit of a hint at what the protocol might have looked like in the subject line of one of the emails from the then Obama-Biden administration to the CIA. The subject line was OVP report query. They were clearly, the office of the vice president was clearly looking into what this report was going to say. They had gotten a heads up that there might be some unflattering things in this report that would have made its way into the presidential daily briefing. It was a PDB briefer. A lot of this report was, and a lot of the emails were heavily redacted, but we do know that it was someone involved in putting together the president's daily brief. And so perhaps it was Biden and his team worried that this would embarrass him in front of the boss, and they wanted it to be left out. But, I was told this was valuable intelligence. The career guys were of the opinion that, knowing what senior Ukrainian officials thought of the visit was something that policymakers here in the United States should know. And it seems, based off of the emails that we discovered and then the report itself, that there was an effort to make certain that they did not.
Is there any insight into why this is coming out now?
Yeah, so I pressed my sources on this. Why is it that suddenly this information, which makes the current president's former rival look rather inept, why is that coming to light? And I was told that this is because CIA Director John Ratcliffe is focused on transparency, that they want to turn over a new leaf at the CIA, and that this is an example, to Tom's point, of what they saw as weaponized intelligence. It is outside of the norm for a politician to interfere in the normal nuts and bolts of intelligence gathering, certainly, burying a report. They want to make certain that this does not happen. And so that's why they felt the need to declassify it. It does create a new standard, though, that they're going to have to live by, because if 5 years from now we suddenly discover that the Trump administration buried an
I'm sure Donald Trump would never squash a report that painted him in an unflattering light. That would
exactly. So, but just like the presidential daily brief, these type of behind the scenes emails don't often come to light. So it's a new standard, but perhaps we'll never have evidence to see whether it's followed.